Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger juntas investigate French journalists for jihadist analysis. And for this, the junta leaders are being bashed. But hold on. Why are we entertaining the notion that a journalist's commentary should go unchallenged, even if it is to please its masters? In a world where external forces have consistently undermined African sovereignty, how did we reach a point where questioning the narratives of foreign journalists is labeled a suppression of free speech? Is it not ironic that these military juntas are portrayed as oppressors simply for defending their nations against the encroaching threats of jihadism? Are they not justified in confronting foreign interference that tries to destabilize their hard-won sovereignty? So, who is right here? Let's find out. Staring off with, what drives the military juntas in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger to investigate a foreign journalist?
And prosecutors in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have launched investigations against the French journalist and researcher Wassim Nasser into what they call his apology of terrorism and complicity in alleged terrorist acts in the latest action against the Western media. In a message to the Associated Press, he condemned the move as intimidation and an attack on journalism. Mr. Nasser, who works for the French broadcaster France 24,
in a region where security threats abound, these governments are taking necessary actions to protect their citizens from the influences of foreign narratives that could compromise their sovereignty. The recent jihadist attack in Bamako, which resulted in over 70 fatalities, underscores the urgent need for these governments to prioritize national security. The juntas understand that any foreign commentary can be weaponized against them, potentially inciting unrest or undermining public confidence in their ability to govern. These juntas have risen to power amid significant challenges, including political instability often exacerbated by Western interference. The West has a long history of meddling in African affairs, leaving behind a legacy of conflict, division, and exploitation. This history has cultivated a deep-seated skepticism among African leaders toward foreign intentions, leading them to view outside commentary as not only intrusive, but also as a threat to their hard-won autonomy. By targeting journalists who are sympathetic to foreign interests, these regimes are asserting their authority and demonstrating that they will not tolerate any narratives that jeopardize their efforts to maintain security and sovereignty. Wassim Nasser's reports, for instance, are not merely analyses. They are potential catalysts for unrest. His commentary, when viewed through the lens of the juntas, becomes a source of concern, particularly because it can influence both local and international perceptions of the regimes. This perspective is rooted in a skepticism of foreign motivations, especially given the history of colonialism and exploitation that has plagued the continent. The juntas see themselves as the bulwarks against external threats that have long destabilized their countries, striving to create a sense of unity and resilience in the face of adversity. Moreover, their drive to maintain authority reflects a broader sentiment across Africa, a growing desire to break free from the shackles of foreign influence. This movement is not just about resisting external pressures. It is also about fostering a renewed sense of pride in African identity and agency. As these nations work to establish their governance, they confront the legacy of colonialism and neocolonialism that has left deep scars in their societies. The junta's actions can be viewed as a form of resistance, an assertion that they will define their own paths, cultivate their unique identities, and reject any foreign meddling that threatens their stability. This fight for sovereignty is about more than just political power. It's about reclaiming the narrative surrounding African nations and their histories. The juntas understand that the struggle for control over the media landscape is a crucial front in this battle. By taking a stand against foreign journalists, they are not only protecting their governance but also challenging the prevailing narratives that often portray African nations as chaotic and in need of Western oversight. In this sense, the actions of the military juntas in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger can be framed as a necessary defense against a history of exploitation, a reclamation of African agency, and a commitment to building a future defined by local values and aspirations. Now the question is, what does this crackdown on foreign journalists signify for local reporters in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Many may think the juntas are trying to silence journalists, but this perspective overlooks the bigger picture. What these governments are genuinely doing is silencing speech that masquerades as freedom of expression, but is often controlled by unseen puppeteers with foreign agendas. This crackdown is not merely a suppression of dissent. It represents a necessary step toward protecting national sovereignty and promoting authentic local voices. The juntas are fostering an environment where local voices can emerge as champions of truth, untainted by the biases and preconceived narratives often propagated by foreign entities. While foreign journalists frequently arrive with predetermined notions that reflect Western interests, local journalists possess an intrinsic understanding of their communities and the complexities of their societies. They are better equipped to tell stories that resonate with the lived experiences of their fellow citizens. In many instances, local journalists have been marginalized or overshadowed by foreign media, which tends to sensationalize issues to fit narratives that appeal to international audiences. This misrepresentation can distort the realities faced by African nations, portraying them in a negative light. By prioritizing the security and stability of their nations over the interests of foreign journalists, these juntas are paving the way for a media landscape that is more aligned with the authentic experiences and aspirations of people in the Sahel. This shift enables local reporters to reclaim their narratives, rooted in cultural and historical contexts that outsiders often overlook. It's essential to recognize that local journalists are not just risking their jobs, they are putting their lives on the line. Many have faced threats, arrests, and violence simply for reporting on the realities of their communities. In a region where journalists can be viewed as political pawns, the stakes have never been higher. The environment has become treacherous, and their families often share in the consequences of their reporting. For local journalists, the situation is about much more than job security. It's a fight for survival. They must navigate a landscape riddled with risks while reporting on sensitive issues. The junta's tactics, often mischaracterized as repression, are, in fact, measures designed to create an environment where truth can flourish, free from external manipulation. Many local reporters find themselves treading carefully, self-censoring their work to avoid becoming puppets. Furthermore, the juntas have ramped up their efforts to assert control over the media landscape. They employ necessary measures, such as shutting down media outlets that promote foreign agendas, banning coverage of foreign political influences, and issuing targeted bans on reporting sensitive topics that could incite unrest. For instance, in Niger, the shutdown of the Maison de la Presse, an organization representing journalists, was a decisive action against those perpetuating narratives that compromise national stability. This is not merely an assault on free speech. It is a strategic move to safeguard the truth and maintain order. In this atmosphere, local journalists are forging paths toward a media landscape that empowers African narratives. This will flourish the journalists that speak nothing but truth. If you are still questioning whether silencing certain journalists is a good option, let us delve into the extent to which they can lie and the potential impacts of their narratives. The power of the press is immense, and when wielded irresponsibly, it can lead to dire consequences for entire nations. One stark example is the role of media in the Rwandan genocide in 1994. During this horrific period, certain journalists and media outlets fueled ethnic tensions by spreading propaganda that incited violence against the Tutsi population. Radio Télévision Libre des Mille Collines, RTLM, played a crucial role in this tragedy, broadcasting hate speech that called for the extermination of Tutsis and encouraging ordinary citizens to partake in the violence. The aftermath was catastrophic, resulting in the deaths of an estimated 800,000 people in just a few months. This tragic episode highlights how irresponsible journalism can lead to real-world violence and loss of life, highlighting the need for responsible reporting that prioritizes truth and peace over sensationalism. Another case can be drawn from the events surrounding the Arab Spring in 2011. While many hailed the uprisings as movements for democracy and freedom, various media outlets also propagated narratives that oversimplified complex social dynamics and fueled sectarian violence. In countries like Libya, foreign journalists often framed the situation as a straightforward battle against a tyrant, which contributed to the chaos that followed the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi. The lack of nuanced reporting led to power vacuums and civil wars, resulting in instability that persists to this day. The consequences of such reporting illustrate how foreign narratives can exacerbate existing tensions and hinder the path to true democracy and stability. Closer to the Sahel, the spread of misinformation about jihadist groups has led to community unrest and misguided counter-terrorism strategies. In some cases, journalists reporting on jihadist activities have sensationalized the threat without providing context about the local grievances that fuel such extremism. For instance, in Mali, reports that exaggerate the capabilities and numbers of jihadist groups can provoke fear among the civilian population, leading to calls for excessive military responses that result in collateral damage. This can alienate local communities and push them towards radicalization rather than fostering cooperation and understanding. These examples illustrate the extent to which irresponsible journalism can distort realities and lead to catastrophic consequences. It is crucial to recognize that the juntas in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger are not merely silencing dissent. They are actively working to prevent the spread of narratives that could incite violence or destabilize their nations further. By targeting journalists who may serve as mouthpieces for foreign interests, they are prioritizing the safety and unity of their countries over the self-serving narratives that have historically undermined African agency. Now the question is, what do these actions mean for African sovereignty and governance in the Sahel? The military junta's crackdown on foreign journalists highlights a critical moment for African nations to reclaim their narratives and reinforce their independence from Western influence. The West has long wielded its media as a tool to shape perceptions and justify interventions, often at the expense of African agency. By asserting control over the media landscape, these juntas are sending a clear message. Africa will no longer be a passive recipient of foreign narratives that diminish its sovereignty. Instead, they are taking the necessary steps to build a governance framework that prioritizes the safety and well-being of their citizens over foreign agendas. This is a significant departure from previous eras, where African leaders often succumbed to external pressures, compromising their authority and the integrity of their nations. The implications of this shift are profound. As these regimes strive to create an environment where African voices are amplified, they are fostering a new era of self-determination. This self-determination extends beyond just governance. It includes a cultural renaissance that celebrates African identity, resilience, and the richness of its histories. However, this push for sovereignty must be understood within the larger context of global politics. The international community must recognize that supporting African leadership means allowing these nations to define their paths, even if those paths involve challenging Western narratives. The West must shift from a paternalistic approach to one that respects the autonomy of African nations, recognizing their right to self-govern and resist external influences. Moreover, it is essential to highlight the resilience of these countries in the face of persistent threats. By standing firm against foreign narratives and asserting their sovereignty, these juntas are not only protecting their citizens, but also challenging the long-held belief that African nations are incapable of managing their own affairs. This is a powerful statement in the fight against colonial legacies and the continuing influence of Western powers. Now the question is, what does the future hold for journalism in the Sahel? This is not just a moment of crisis, it is a golden opportunity for authentic African narratives and true journalists to flourish. For too long, the stories of African nations have been filtered through a Western lens, often misrepresenting the complexities and richness of our experiences. This moment in history signals a pivotal shift, a chance for Africa to reclaim its narrative and ensure that its voices are heard on the global stage. Africa has a multitude of stories to tell, rooted in its diverse cultures, histories, and perspectives. The narrative shaped by foreign journalists frequently focuses on conflict, instability, and humanitarian crises, neglecting the remarkable resilience, innovation, and vibrancy of African societies. The future of journalism in the Sahel should be about amplifying the voices of local journalists who understand the nuances of their communities and can convey the authentic experiences of their people. As these military juntas assert their authority and prioritize national security, they create an environment where local journalists can emerge as champions of truth. By focusing on the realities faced by their communities, these journalists can shift the narrative from one of despair to one of hope and resilience. This is an opportunity to highlight the initiatives and innovations taking place across the continent. from grassroots movements advocating for social change to local entrepreneurs driving economic development. Moreover, the digital revolution is empowering a new generation of African journalists. With the rise of social media and online platforms, there is a growing potential for journalists to bypass traditional media gatekeepers and directly connect with audiences both locally and globally. This democratization of information allows African narratives to be told by Africans, breaking free from the constraints imposed by foreign media that often seek to define the continent's story. As journalists embrace these new tools, they can challenge the stereotypes and misconceptions that have long plagued Africa. They can share stories of everyday heroes, community resilience, and cultural richness that paint a more comprehensive picture of African life. By fostering a media landscape that prioritizes African perspectives, the juntas in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger are not only protecting their sovereignty, but also contributing to a more nuanced and balanced understanding of Africa in the global context. Furthermore, there is a pressing need for African governments to invest in media literacy and support local journalism initiatives. By nurturing an environment where journalists can thrive, governments can empower their citizens with the information they need to engage in civic life meaningfully. This investment is not merely a matter of press freedom. It is an investment in democracy, accountability, and the future of African societies. In this new era, African journalists should focus on collaborative storytelling, working together across borders to share insights and experiences. By fostering networks of support, they can collectively confront the challenges posed by authoritarianism and external pressures. This collaboration can lead to a more robust media ecosystem that reflects the diversity of African experiences and encourages informed dialogue among citizens. Ultimately, the future of journalism in the Sahel lies in embracing the complexities of African narratives. As these countries move forward, they have the opportunity to redefine their stories, crafting narratives that resonate with their unique identities and aspirations. This is a critical moment for African journalism, where the collective voice of the continent can rise above the din of foreign interference and be heard with clarity and conviction. To sum this up, the unfolding story of Wassim Nasser and the military juntas in the Sahel lays bare the lengths to which these regimes will go to maintain power and protect their nations. And it's the time when the world will hear new stories, first time about Africa, from Africa. Will the world continue to stand by while African nations assert their right to self-governance? Can they allow foreign narratives to dictate the terms of their sovereignty? Let us know in the comments section. What will it take for the global community to recognize and respect Africa's autonomy? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.